Have you ever had that feeling deep in your gut that something is just wrong? That prickly sensation on the back of your neck when you're alone in a dark room? Or the sudden irrational fear that someone is watching you from just beyond the light? Most of the time, we brush it off. We tell ourselves it's just our imagination running wild. But what if it isn't? What if sometimes that fear is a warning? Tonight we're diving into 3 true stories from people who listened to that inner voice. Stories that will make you question every shadow and every unexplained noise. These aren't tales from a horror movie. They happen to real people, just like you and me. So lock your doors, check under your bed, and get ready, because things are about to get chilling. Our first story comes from a Reddit user named Clara, who was a college student living in her first off-campus apartment. It was an old building, the kind with creaky floors and pipes that groaned at all hours. She'd gotten used to the building's personality, but one night the noises changed. It started subtly, a faint scratching sound coming from her bedroom closet. At first, she blamed it on a mouse. She set a trap, but the scratching continued, growing louder and more deliberate each night. It wasn't the frantic scurrying of a rodent. It sounded like someone was dragging their fingernails down the inside of the door. One evening, while studying in her living room, she heard it again, but this time it was followed by a soft thud, as if something had fallen inside the closet. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She tried to reason with herself. Maybe a box had shifted. But the scratching started again, more insistent this time. Scrape, scrape, scrape. She froze, straining her ears. And then she heard it. Voice. It was a low, guttural whisper, so faint she almost missed it. It seemed to be mumbling, but she couldn't make out any words. That was it. She grabbed her phone and keys and fled to a friend's place for the night. The next morning, she called her landlord, trying to sound calm as she explained the weird noises. He was skeptical, but agreed to send a maintenance guy over. When the maintenance man arrived, Clara stood back as he approached the closet. He jiggled the handle. It was locked, from the outside. With a deadbolt she had never seen before, her blood ran cold. She had lived there for 6 months and had never noticed a deadbolt on her own closet door. The maintenance guy had to use a drill to get it open. When the door finally swung inward, they both recoiled. The inside of the closet was covered in long, deep scratches. But that wasn't the worst part. The back wall of the closet wasn't a wall at all. It was a makeshift door, crudely cut into the plaster. It led to a small, dark, and utterly foul-smelling crawl space between the walls of the apartment building. Inside, they found a dirty sleeping bag, some empty food wrappers, and a small pile of Clara's own belongings, a missing sweater, a single earring, and several photos that had been taken from her albums. Someone had been living in her walls, watching her through a tiny peephole drilled into the back of the closet. Clara broke her lease and moved out that same day. She never found out who it was or how long they had been there. This next story takes us to the desolate, winding roads of the American Midwest. Mark was a long-haul truck driver, used to spending endless nights on the road with only the radio for company. He'd seen his fair share of strange things, but nothing prepared him for what he experienced one foggy night in rural Nebraska. He was on a tight schedule, pushing through a thick blanket of fog that reduced his visibility to just a few feet. The highway was eerily empty. Around 2 a.m., his headlights caught something on the side of the road. It was a woman, standing perfectly still, wearing what looked like a vintage white dress. Mark slowed down, concerned. What was a woman doing out here in the middle of nowhere at this hour, in this weather? As he got closer, a chill that had nothing to do with the night air crept over him. Her dress was pristine, impossibly clean for the damp, muddy conditions. Her face was pale, almost luminous in the fog, and her eyes were wide and empty. She didn't wave for help or even look at his truck as it approached. She just stared straight ahead into the darkness. Every instinct in Mark's body screamed at him to keep driving. He floored the gas pedal, his truck roaring past her. He glanced in his rearview mirror, his heart pounding. She was gone. Vanished. He told himself the fog was playing tricks on him. Must have imagined it. He tried to shake it off, turning up the radio, but the image of her vacant stare was burned into his mind. About 20 minutes later, he saw something else on the roadside. It was her again. The same woman, the same white dress, the same unnerving stillness. This time, she was a little closer to the road. It was impossible. He was driving at over 60 miles an hour. There's no way she could have gotten ahead of him, Panic began to set in. He gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white, and sped up, determined not to look back. But curiosity, or perhaps sheer terror, got the better of him. He checked his side mirror, and his blood turned to ice. She wasn't on the side of the road anymore. She was running alongside his truck, her feet not even touching the ground. She was floating, her white dress billowing around her, as she effortlessly kept pace with his speeding vehicle. Her head was turned towards him, and her mouth was open in a silent, agonizing scream. Mark slammed his foot on the accelerator, pushing the truck as fast as it would go. He didn't dare look in the mirror again. He drove for what felt like an eternity, his eyes glued to the road ahead, until the first light of dawn began to break through the fog. He pulled into the first truck stop he saw, his body trembling uncontrollably. He never drove that route at night again. Our final story is a stark reminder to always trust your intuition, especially when it comes to online interactions. It comes from a woman named Sarah, who had recently moved to a new city and decided to try online dating to meet people. She matched with a man named Ben who seemed perfect. He was charming, funny, and they had tons in common. After a week of texting, they decided to meet for coffee. The date went well, or so she thought. He was just as charismatic in person, but there was something slightly off about him. He had an intensity in his eyes that was a little unsettling. And he seemed to know things about her that she hadn't mentioned in her profile or their chats, like the name of the small town she grew up in. She brushed it off as a coincidence. Maybe she had mentioned it and forgotten. They planned a second date for the following weekend. In the days leading up to it, however, Ben's messages became more frequent and demanding. He'd get upset if she didn't reply immediately, started making comments about what she was wearing, once texting her that blue scarf looks really good on you. The problem was, she was wearing that exact scarf at that moment, walking home from work. She looked around wildly, but the street was crowded. He could have been anywhere. Fear started to creep in. This wasn't charming anymore. It was terrifying. She decided to cancel their second date, telling him politely that she didn't think they were a good match. His reaction was explosive. He sent her a barrage of angry, threatening texts, calling her names and accusing her of leading him on. Then came the final chilling message. It's a shame. Could have been so happy in your cute little apartment. The one with the big oak tree outside the bedroom window. Sarah felt the air leave her lungs. Her apartment did have a large oak tree right outside her bedroom window. She had never told him where she lived. She had never even mentioned the tree. She immediately blocked his number and all his social media profiles. But she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. That night she couldn't sleep. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the leaves on the tree outside, sent a jolt of terror through her. She looked out her window and saw a figure standing in the shadows across the street, just watching her building. She called the police, but by the time they arrived, the figure was gone. Sarah stayed with a friend for a week before breaking her lease and moving to a new apartment in a different part of the city. She deleted all her dating profiles and never heard from Ben again. But she never forgot the terrifying realization that the monster you re-talking to online might know exactly where you live. And that's all the time we have for tonight. 3 stories of ordinary people thrust into terrifying situations. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many times have we ignored that little voice in our head, that gut feeling telling us to run? Maybe the real horror isn't in the darkness, but in what might be hiding there, watching and waiting. Stay safe out there. Be aware of your surroundings, and always, always trust your instincts. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.